Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the University Webinar Series. I'm Jonathan Pearce, one of the RFU University Partnership Officers. Today's webinar will focus on university and community club links. What are they and why they're important? I'm really happy to be joined by a great panel today. We've got Flora Shepherd, George Maxwell, Kitty Young and Chris Dodd joining us today. So Flora, let's kick off with you. Tell us a bit about yourself and your role and how you support club links across your university cluster.
Hi, I'm Flora. I'm the cluster officer for Manchester. I work with Manchester Metropolitan University and the University of Manchester to ensure that they've got good rugby development programs. So in 2019-2020, we had a range of about 500 players across the cluster involved with rugby somehow. And that was across AU programs, intramural competition and touch rugby. So I work mainly with the intramural teams and find them opportunities to continue to develop outside of their matches. Where the local club links come in handy, it's really valuable that we have so many clubs around us, because what we like to do is every half of a semester get a local club to come in and coach the intramural teams so that they can create those bonds with external clubs and continue to develop. Sometimes it's just coaches that come down, sometimes they bring coaches and 3s and 4 team players. And so that's just so useful to have. And obviously not every club is for every person, so having all these different clubs coming out through the year is really beneficial, and we have seen really good take up from students going further afield to play club rugby. Also, as I mentioned, we are Manchester cluster, so although we do like to play most of our fixtures on grass pitches, sometimes that's not really possible because it's always rainy up here. So we have good links with clubs who've got 3Gs, and so by having that link, we can call them up if we know it's going to be an awful weather on the day, and ensure that we can still get these matches played by moving the fixtures onto 3G, which obviously we wouldn't be able to do with the university pitches on a Wednesday, because that's athletic union, like the Bucks fixtures. So
yeah, absolutely. That's really important. You know, that tangible benefit of having that link with the club, that they can support you in getting your games played when your pitches are out of order. So you mentioned some of those links around your intramural teams. How did those links get established? How did they come about?
Well, having lived in Manchester for a while, you hear about the clubs. You hear about the clubs which are interesting to different students, which give those benefits to students. Like, it might be they give them like food or drinks after a game, or they might give them lifts to a match, because obviously most students don't have cars. So you hear about them, and then we just reached out at the beginning of the year. We're constantly getting feedback from the students, asking them which clubs they like. And so from previous years, and then from 2019-2020 season, just speaking to those students and then building the links from there.
Yeah. And, you know, did you set any expectations with the clubs that you're working with, that this is what we want as a minimum standard from you for our university players?
Well, so when going in, we explained to them what intramural is and how it can not only benefit us but benefit them, because if they do this right, if they can deliver these certain elements, and definitely the clubs go above and beyond. I mean, it gives the opportunity for maybe certain groups of players in the intramural leagues who wouldn't get to have certain coaching opportunities. So we've got clubs coming in and teaching front rows how to scrum better, giving like backs moves, which, if traditionally with our intramural teams, it's just players coaching each other. So Yeah, it's certainly very useful.
Yeah, definitely. And you've talked a bit about your role as a university cluster officer. Tell us a bit more about your time as a player at Manchester Met University. Did you play club rugby when you were at university?
I did. So, like many women, I didn't play rugby before I got to university. So, I started at Man Met. I quickly realised that I was very into rugby. It was really fun, but I was quite a bit behind some of the other players that I wanted to play like. So through that, I just realised that I needed to practice more to develop my skills quicker. And then from there, some of the women I played with were just like, oh, come along to this Inner Warrior event, come along to these pitch up and plays. And by going to a few of them, I really got comfortable playing club rugby and playing with, not students. And yeah, I got really hooked.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
that's really true in terms of, I think it's around 60% of the current field players at our clubs started at university. That was their first experience. So, it's great to hear that a lot of those clubs are engaging with universities, because that's crucial to ensuring they carry on playing when they finish. Great, thanks, Flora. Chris, you are the Community Rugby Communications Executive by day. However, you're here with your club hat on.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit more about your club role and how you've engaged with students?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. For us, I'm obviously the head coach at Old Emmanuel RFC. Probably been there, it's been my second season now, or disrupted season as such. But we've used it as a recruitment tool and as an understanding from an old role as a community rugby coach, that students travel from all over to go to university, and kind of in the heart of a London university, we've got players from central London, or players that would be playing down in Kent, for example. And we've just used it as a tool to say, look, we understand that you'll get rugby maybe once a week. If you want it twice a week, here's the offer. If you want to just turn up one training session, here's an offer. And it kind of built into just conversations with players and how we engage to get them down and ask them what they wanted. What do they want from their university or maybe their club rugby experience. And some of them really want to push to play in a first team locally. And others went, do you know what, I just want to have a run around on a Saturday because I've got nothing really else to do, or whatever. So that's kind of how we engage with them. I think probably more on this aspect now is around the Zoom and just having calls and touching bases with players, and not having it about rugby. It's, if you just try to force rugby down their throat, they get bored of it. So we've done similar stuff like Zooms or themed evenings as well, which is basically player led, and I just kind of rock up and say hi and touch base, and that's really it. And that's how we've engaged. We've kind of not had a real strict policy around it, and I know we'll talk later on around the benefits that clubs can offer. But yeah, we just almost had it as a space of somewhere different, and like a different group of people that they can interact in. And I think probably being a London kind of club / and linked with the university, it allows those players to have an outlet after they finish university to go, oh, actually, I want to stay around here because I like the rugby club, and helping out players that way. So that's kind of where and how we've engaged with our students is just figure out what they want, rather than us saying this is what our offer is, going, well, what do you want? Let's tailor it to you as an individual.
Yeah, and that's really important. It's got to be student led, hasn't it, in terms of what their needs are and their wants. And how do you manage that? Because obviously student needs are going to be slightly different to some of your players' needs, and how do you kind of integrate those students with club players?
Yeah, I think we normally we'll talk kind of to our club players beforehand and say, look, we've got players coming down, let's make them feel welcome. And every rugby club, if a new player comes down and a rugby club says, oh, we don't need a new player, then I think they're kind of silly in that respect, because every club needs players no matter what, because players get old and they leave. So they've really been kind of encompassed, and we train as a whole group, and we coach players as an individual rather than a group. So yes, we'll have a group session, but we know that, say, John will need something different than, say, George will. So and we'll coach that player through their needs and their expectations, and that's how we've managed it. And the players enjoy it a lot more because we don't have a lot of group huddles, we don't have a lot of stoppage time, we don't have time where we're just chatting for no reason. It's yes, they're out there to run around, so let them run around, and we'll do our bit while they do their bit, and coach on the fly. So yeah, it's been great, and it's kind of young players in a club is always good because it's just more energy in training, and they run around the old guys, and the old guys goes, right, okay, I'll catch you at some point, and that's it. So and that's kind of the benefit, and there's a lot of laughing and joking, and they seamlessly they fitted in really well and really enjoyed it. So yeah,
I was going to ask, has the fitness
so the fitness levels have gone up. I think some of them kind of looked around and
students.
Yeah, so they kind of looked around and went, oh, I'm not as young as I used to be. I need to kind of just pick it up a bit more or get to that extra bit. So so there's a lot of extra effort, should we say, from some more of our senior players, just trying to stay or keep up with the young ones. But it's also a case of fresh ideas.
Injuries gone up.
Yeah, a couple of hamstrings every now and then. But I think it's almost so fresh ideas as well. I think as a club you can get quite ingrained in how you feel you should be or what you're doing, and as a fresh eyes that students, they'll go back to their home clubs because they can be dual registered and things like that. So they go back there, come back to you and go, oh, we've had this idea, what do you think? And they're likely to go play in the same league, so it's fine. And they challenge your way of thinking as a coach and as other players, which is always good for kind of fresh ideas.
Chris, I'll pick up in JP's absence. So what do you think has been the kind of biggest benefit of bringing these students in, other than has there been anything off the pitch that's benefited the club?
For the club, yes. Like as a club, we think our student membership is literally like £10. And that's it. We just kind of like, look, we just want you to play rugby, and we don't care about the money aspect of it. We'll kind of give you everything that our members would have, our kind of those that are working and stuff. They have, they've got access to our gym, they've got access to our, we have a CrossFit company on site. They get access to that as part of their membership. Physio, we don't restrict them because we just want you to have the best experience you can while you're at uni playing rugby. And if you just use it for 3 years and then you disappear back home, fine. If you stay, even better. But we've just seen kind of an uplift in energy, just on field, off field as well, like a lot more engagement between players. Like I said, there's a good. Unfortunately, we haven't managed to have as many or any socials really this season, like since we built that link.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's a really kind of fresh link, so there's lots of energy around it, and it's just like themed evenings or bits or pieces, and we take one idea from one group and give it to the other in terms of, say, a university link and Zoom call, or we take that idea and put it on another one. So it just keeps kind of the ideas fresh, and I think the value is because you do have a constant stream of players coming through over kind of 3-year period, and then you get a new set, there's always new ideas. So on field and off field, I think it's a massive benefit, and probably off field we'll see a real big boost by having the students, just the conversations that we're having, and kind of maybe more the social element as well, which would be nice.
Have you seen any obviously the last webinar we were talking around things like inclusion and kind of the welfare side of things. Have you seen any of that come through from the students, or do you think that will be something that probably develops over time?
I think that's probably something that's going to develop over time with us. As I said, it's a relatively new link at the beginning of the season. Like, it's been tenuous before. Like, we've had a couple of old players, but that stayed on after their university time. Then the link dropped off. Now we picked it up again. So I think the welfare side of it will pick up, and I think for them, again, as Bob was speaking at the beginning part of it, that it's been a really tough year. So once they're back and they are back, they're going to want to run around and be with a different group of people, and just see different faces, or any faces would be nice. That's probably not their families, and I think that's where rugby clubs will play a massive part in that just well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being, diversity, inclusion, because you've got everyone at a rugby club that you could ever need to rely on. So that's where we feel that post this lockdown and sport comes back, whatever state it comes back in, rugby clubs will be huge for universities, and universities will need clubs, and clubs will need universities.
That's really benefits the students, but also that actually coaches are getting new ideas from these.
Got a bit of a delay there, JP.
Oh, JP, you're back.
But...
You're ahead of your voice.
Okay, I'm
quite happy just to give a brief.
Yeah, George. Sorry, thank you, Chris. George, we'll come to you.
I'll step in while JP sorts himself out. No, just a brief summary of what I do. I'm a club developer. It's a new role that's sort of just been created following our restructuring, and my sort of main purpose, I guess, is to support rugby clubs to operate sustainably and be fit for the future. So that can be in terms of management structures, diversifying their revenues, increasing their revenues through different ways. Also key is sort of growing and developing volunteer bases. I work within the sort of London and Southeast team, so there's sort of 5 of us there. There's sort of 20 of us in the country. I predominantly work in Surrey, so Chris sort of falls under my remit, and a very successful club there. And I sort of look after Southwest London. And how are we doing that? We are sort of doing that as is the way now through sort of Zoom calls, webinars. We obviously link clubs with other sort of resources. That can be the RFU, the CVs, which in my case would be Surrey, external partners like Sport England, Active Boroughs. And we sort of have a lot of cluster-based calls every 6 to 8 weeks. I'll sort of get 10, 12 clubs on a call and just give them a sort of RFU update, and just, I guess, from them, just find out what their sort of challenges are. And what we're trying to do is just trying to get other clubs in this day and age to show them if they've had success with the challenges that club may be facing. So we find it very powerful if a club, 1, a rugby club, and 2, somebody in the local area has had the same issue and has overcome it. We also sort of are there for sort of advice on, through the pandemic, it's been a lot of sort of grant support, return to rugby, the sort of the steps we've taken and what they need to do. And I guess the main aim has been to keep all our clubs alive, which luckily in the whole country, every club has survived. And I guess going forward, the big challenges will be around, I think we've touched on it, on players, getting players back, volunteers back, facilities reopen. And that's where I think sort of it's key to have a link between the clubs and the universities, because obviously universities are a great pool of players. So I think that's a huge sort of important step going forward, as it always has been.
So off the back of kind of Flora's example with bringing in coaches for the intramural teams and things, have you seen any other really good examples of how clubs might do that, might go and find players, or like you say, find volunteers? Because university students are going to be hopefully the club leaders of the future. So how we integrate them in those roles as well.
No, very much so. I think Chris has touched on a lot of points, because it is the link between clubs and universities. And I think it is a two-way street, because obviously clubs can benefit from getting new players in, which obviously increases the pool of players. It can increase the standard of players, touching on, new ideas, new fitness levels, make all the old guys run faster. JP,
go on, JP.
Am I back?
You're back.
We can hear you, yeah.
Great. I'll keep the camera off just to avoid any future issues. Apologies for that, and thanks, Katie, for picking that up. Flawless. Thank you. So, Katie, actually, I'm going to move on to you now. So, you are the SRFU Club Development Chair, but you also support student clubs at DMU in your day job. Do both roles complement each other?
Oh yeah, definitely. Bit of a busman's holiday, I guess. So my day job, I oversee 30 odd different sports, the club program, so club development program for them, as well as the recreational program, sports volunteering, partnerships, well-being. Yeah, you name it, I've probably got a bit of a finger in the pie. So for me, my role with the SRFU is great, because it's kind of taking that broader perspective, but just looking at one sport. So yeah, there's a lot of crossover, and obviously I'm kind of involved in or have an awareness of what's going on with Bucks, what's going on in the wider university sector. So I think the great thing is that I haven't ever played rugby. I like watching it, but rugby is not my sport. But I kind of bring a slightly different perspective in what we can learn from other sports, what we can learn from across the sector, but also what do universities need? And I think this university club link, there's a different approach to it where it serves the purpose for university strategies as well. You know, there's an awful lot more focus on community engagement and building those links. There's things around employability. So, you know, as Chris was saying about that network of support with the players, that could be that students find work with players that are out in the local community or involved in local businesses that they wouldn't have come across otherwise. You know, and our job as universities is to get our students into positive outcomes when they finish. So yeah, they complement each other really, really well.
Yeah, great. And George, you were talking about a you know, university club links as a two-way street. Can you give a bit more on that in terms of how that works with regards to community clubs and then universities?
Yeah, I think it is a two-way. We touched on obviously the need for players for clubs, and you know, maybe for universities, just some extra facilities, training opportunities, coaching. The sort of area I cover, Surrey, Southwest London, you know, there are a lot of students do end up here, which has different challenges, but there are also a lot of local universities that have built up links. Old Emmanuel's being one, sort of Roehampton, you know, Kingston and Guildford of local clubs. And I think the key thing is to keep that relationship going and talking. From a university point of view, I guess it's finding your local clubs and just not being afraid to ask of what the club can do to help you. Be it in terms of, you know, we want to play Friday night for a club, that's brilliant. The club's generally empty. A lot of clubs do have floodlights. It can be equipment, coaches. So I think it's very useful to just, you know, if you're looking for a local club from a university point of view, just go onto the RFU website. There's a great club finder tool that'll sort of list all your local clubs. You know, clubs are different with different offers. Some might have women's and girls, some might offer touch. So it's doing your research and just finding the clubs that work for you. And as mentioned, you know, in Southwest London, for example, there are a lot of clubs, and so they are all trying to get the same pool of players. So, you know, they sort of raise their game in terms of what they offer. And as we touched on, you know, they're willing to do, you know, to help out as much as they can in terms of, you know, cheap or reduced membership, picking up students, maybe a free pint and a meal after training. So that, yeah, there is a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely, and it has to be an attractive offer for those students to,
Indeed, yeah.
You know, especially as you mentioned in the London area, there's a lot of clubs in close proximity, a lot of students there. So, you know, what can you offer those students to attract them to your club, and you know, that's all about the membership that, you know, attracts them after they graduate as well. That's just as important as their university experience. Great, thanks, George. Katie, back to you. Around the SRFU, what sort of role do they play in supporting university club links? And do you have any good examples you can share where this has worked well?
Well, I think just kind of following on what George was just saying, it is very much around what can community clubs offer the students, but also I think our role as the SRFU is to work with the RFU and other CBs to help them understand what students can do for the community clubs. You know, it is the two-way thing, and students, as we said, bring a new energy to a playing team, and obviously can be an extra pool of players, but they can also bring skills and expertise in, you know, lots of other ways, depending on what they're studying or what their kind of their interest is. So yeah, for us as the SRFU, for me especially in my role in terms of development, it's about seeing all the different opportunities and trying to understand the different needs. So the needs of the community club that we, you know, learn about as a CB for the RFU, as well as what are the students telling us that they want and need. So how do we help them solve those problems, learn from the rest of the game, but also really embed them in the game. You know, university students are a transient population, but what we want is for them to play rugby, whether that's, you know, when they start university, at university, and after university. You're only a student. Most students are only a student for a relatively short period of time, and we want them to keep playing afterwards. So, you know, the game finders, what the club finder opportunity through the RFU, all of those things, it's our role, I think, to promote those, to make sure that student clubs are aware of those opportunities, and really promote them and share good practice, but share good practice from pre-university, at university, and post-university. So we're really well placed to have quite a big impact. I mean, in terms of good examples, goodness, you put me on the spot. I mean, so there's, well, my personal experience at De Montfort. Our cluster officer Chris at the moment is working on building links with a local club. Again, not just around the playing opportunity and increasing capacity. We're not a huge institution. We two or three men's teams, one female team, and similar to what Flora was saying, we have a range of students who want to improve their skills and play more to kind of speed that process up, but also students who are maybe used to or more experienced players who want to go and play at a higher level. So working with the community clubs to meet those needs for a range of students is yeah, really important.
Yeah, and you almost referenced the student journey there, didn't you, in terms of before they arrive at university, during their time at university, and then when they leave. And it's all linked in, you know, some of the resources and initiatives that we've got as the RFU in terms of support that. You know, you referenced the game finder, their role in ensuring that university students can find the right opportunity at university, but also ensuring that they then continue that path into adult rugby and into the community clubs is really important. And you know, we get a lot of return on investment from that, and that's a key role to the success of ensuring that we continue that player pipeline into our community clubs. Great. And finally, Katie, do you have any top tips for any student club committees out there in terms of establishing a club link?
Goodness, yes. I think if you are at a university where there is a sports department, speak to them. There might be things going on in terms of kind of university strategy partnerships that you can tap into. Again, think about what you as students can offer the community club, not just what you want from them, but what are you going to take and add to their offer, their program. Don't be afraid to ask, and yeah, just go in with a positive, enthusiastic approach, and ultimately everybody wants to play rugby, so it's what you can contribute to the game long term.
Yeah, as I was saying, it's based on the student needs. The students have to really think about what link they want to have that club. What do they want to get from that club in terms of having that partnership and ensure that it fits, you know, the benefits of the players, the benefits of the student committee, and also that sustainability element as well. Yeah. Great, thanks for that, guys. We're going to go to an opportunity now for anybody that's in the audience to ask some questions. So if I can ask if you could just put the person's name and the question so we know who that's directed to. So if you've got any questions, Sandra, you can come off mic if you want to, if you feel that's better.
I don't have a chat window, so I kind of had to do it that way. So apologies for the incorrect method. I've got a few questions, but you know, I'll ask one or two, and if it goes quiet, I've got some more. Chris, you mentioned earlier on about players and volunteers attending clubs from further afield, rather than just, you know, in the local area because they come from further afield. Now, just can you give me some sort of guidance? How further afield are we reaching out to as clubs to make that sort of, we don't go too far, but also we don't want to be stepping on other clubs' toes or be seen to be doing that? And I know that someone mentioned earlier on, I think it might have been Flora, mentioned, well, yeah, but there might be lots of clubs, but not every player want to go to that club. They want to go to that club. It's a different skill set, a different environment. So I just kind of want to know how far afield we're looking out to from our local club.
So, say for example, for Alder Manuals, we've got Kingston on our doorstep and Roehampton. So Roehampton is pretty much a 15-20 minute drive, and we're quite lucky in respect to that. And I think you can probably go as far afield as you need to, or you feel you want to, because it depends on your offer to compare to X or Z or Y club. And you know, in relation to where we're saying players coming from far afield, well, we've got players that live in Kent, so would be at Medway as a mini or junior, have come to a London university, and during the week they're not going to go drive all the way back for a game on Saturday. So the value of maybe dual registration has helped us as well. So we can say, look, you can pay for the university, you can pay for us when you're at university, and then when you go back for Christmas, whenever, you can still pay, for example, at Medway, and it's no issue with that. So players can almost be registered for 3 different teams. That's really helped us, and we, you know, we're not going to tread on anyone's toes. And essentially, if a club was to say, well, actually, hang on a minute, you're encroaching on what we're doing, we'd go, okay, well, really sorry, we didn't mean to, wasn't kind of our intention to do that, and then maybe work with that club to see how we can just provide a best offer for these students, rather than going, oh, that's my player, that's that player, or actually what's best for the players rather than what's best for our need right now. And just have that conversation, really.
Okay, that's interesting, because I didn't actually know that on GMS you could register for 3 different teams. How interesting. So that's obviously something I need to look into. But thank you very much indeed. I appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Sandra.
Sandra, I think sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, in terms of just what Chris said, you know, working with other clubs in the area, you know, a good example was in Bristol, where the cluster officer there got all the clubs in the local area together, and they just talked about, you know, it should be needs driven from the clubs as well, about tapping into players so that we can ensure that the players get a good experience, but also clubs that need those players are prioritized so that that game takes place. So it is working together as a collective to really understand, you know, how's this going to work and agree a process.
I think as well, Sandra, it's really interesting if the university clubs actually have an understanding of how many of their members are commuter students, for example, how many are you know, still living at home and might have connections to their home team and want to carry on playing for them as well. So as has been said, it's about understanding the needs of the club as well as the needs of the students.
Thank you. I have more questions if no one's going to ask any.
I think you've got the floor, Sandra.
Oh, you know what? Until someone jumps in, I'll just do that.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, I mean, I have, as a local club, I have reached out to university. I've probably not gone further afield, not having thought about that, where do players come from scenarios. That's probably my error, which is a good learning process. But I have reached out to unis, and I'm not sure whether the unis are even interested. And I do offer what we can offer as opposed to what we want, because obviously everyone wants volunteers and players, that's a given. But it's more about what we can offer to those players. But I don't really know if a uni's interested. You know, is there a key person we should go to? Is there someone like a kitty that we should go to centrally that can disseminate information across the board? But, you know, I just feel lost sometimes because I don't know where to start going to these universities.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that one first if anyone else wants to jump in. I think it's great that you want to establish a link. That's really positive. There's many sort of avenues. I guess it's getting in touch with the Students' Union at that university, and you can often find that on their website. And then you can also track down the student committee as well. Alternatively, you can go on the England Rugby website and find your university partnership officer's details, who then can help establish that link, create that communication with you. So whereabouts are you based, Sandra? Where are you from?
I'm based in the south east, so yeah, so we're basically 10 minutes from the Dartford Bridge, 10 minutes from the Blackwall Tunnel. That's an easier way to describe it for everyone.
Great. Okay, well that's easy then. I'm your university partnership officer, so we can touch base after that. And George has put his hand up saying he's the club developer in that area. So
I'm not, Sandra, but if you let me know your club, I'll catch up with you afterwards, and I can put you in touch with your local club developer. Who will know
George, I think I might know who that is already, but that's fine. I still will touch base with you, and I do appreciate that. And it's really good to know that's the case. Thank you.
Yeah, and Sandra, you may find if you can find the chat function just on the top bar, Andrew Chaston, our partnerships development managers, just put a link in there where you can find a club education links guide, which will then give you some guidance as to how to go about establishing those links.
Lovely. We like Andrew for being so helpful. Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up?
I've got one to offer some help just to the RFU if that's what they need. But you know, sometimes you notice on your Find a Club tool that there are clubs there that either do or actually don't have the offerings of what they really have at their club. And I have tried a few times to say this club has got this, but they don't have it, and this club hasn't got this, and they do have it. You know, who do you send that to? Because to be quite honest, it's kind of just fallen on deaf ears, and I'd love to be able to share it, because if you see something, you just want to put it right.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really important that the information is up to date so that students see what's there. If things have changed over the years. George, is that something you could pick up in terms of?
I'll get in touch with Sandra afterwards, and we can just, if you can let me know which club specifically, and I'll follow it on for you, Sandra.
Great, excellent. Okay, if there's no further questions, then I think we can wrap up now. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank our panelists. Thank you to Flora, to George, to Katie, and to Chris for giving up your time today. Great engagement and input, and I hope everybody's found that useful. I have. It's been great to share the experience and really deep dive into engaging with community clubs. I'd also like to thank everybody who took the time to come on this morning and listen. We hope you found it useful. We are recording the meeting and we will post that on our YouTube channel, England Rugby Unis on YouTube. We do have various other webinars that we've put on there as well. There's a great webinar about mental health and inclusion, which is a great listen. And I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you and say goodbye and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.